Welcome into No Punt Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. I am your host, Joe Zollo. We have 8 more teams to cover in part 3 of our Look Back series. We are now getting into pretty much all playoff teams from the 2022 season. Most of these teams made it back to the playoffs. I'd say over half of them made it back, or at least we're on the edge of making it there. One of the teams we are conveniently talking about today just broke some news roughly 15 minutes ago to this recording, and we will start off with that news. Let's get into it. Welcome into No Punt Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. I am your host, Joe Zollo. Just Josh this week. Ryan is being a bitch, and he had to go to the hospital.
He's under the weather. Give him a break.
And he has a swollen knee, and something happened. He had to go to the ER. Come on, Ryan. Jeez, suck it up. No, Ryan is down for the count this week. It's just Josh and I. Ironically, Ryan was not a part of many of these A Look Inside shows. Due to other reasons why he couldn't be there. So I guess this worked out perfectly, didn't it? It worked out great.
It's one way to look at it.
Yeah, one way to look at it. Quick recap or preview of who we'll be talking about. Detroit Lions, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Seattle Seahawks, Miami Dolphins, Los Angeles Chargers, Baltimore Ravens, Minnesota Vikings, wrapping it up with the Jaguars. We will not be going in that order because we will bump the Chargers to the top after we go through quick coaching news before what was just dropped about 15 minutes ago. Antonio Pierce is now the official Raiders head coach. That's not surprising when your best player threatens to leave the team and ask for a trade. You're probably going to hire him as your head coach. And they hire former Chargers GM Tom Telesco as their GM. So mediocre teams continue to stay mediocre. Assistant GM Dan Morgan hired as the GM of the Panthers. Okay.
He's a former player. I mean,
sure, whatever.
Worked out okay for San Francisco. First off, I just want to apologize to everybody that's listening. If you hear a massive echo, as you can see, there's not a whole lot behind me. I'm in the process of moving. Not a whole lot to cancel out some echoes, so I apologize.
Super unprofessional here by the founder of Club Fantasy.
Oh, shut up.
Joshua Hudson. The Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan hired as the new head coach of the Titans. Anybody have him on their radar? That vaunted Bengals run game. Anybody have that on their radar as head coach of the Titans?
Yeah,
no,
really doesn't do anything for me.
No. Kind of feels worse than Vrabel, and by kind of I mean definitely feels worse. Eagles part way with defensive coordinator, Sean. How do you Desai? Thank you. And offensive coordinator Brian Johnson and the interim defensive play caller Matt Patricia. Shockingly, not expected to be back with the Philadelphia Eagles. They're cleaning house at the coordinator position. Why not even touch the coach, right? I mean, fuck Nick Sirianni, right? What are we doing? Packers fired DC Joe Barry. Fair. Honestly, straight up fair. Vic Fangio also leaves Miami, mutual parting of the ways, which he was fired. That's exactly what that means, is he was fired. And he's likely to land in Philadelphia, as Sirianni wanted him last year. It'll be a good spot for him. And
his family's in Pennsylvania as well. And with the expected moving on of Jonathan Gannon, the timing just didn't work out. So that's why he wasn't in Philly this year.
And at 6:45 p.m. Wednesday, Eastern Time, Jim Harbaugh is leaving Michigan. Where is he going, ladies and gentlemen? He is going to the Los Angeles Chargers to revive that franchise, to put 10 more butts in the seats of Los Angeles Chargers game. I hate shitting on the Chargers because I work in sports. I understand how difficult it can be. And they have a very good social team and arguably the best content social team in all of professional sports, minor leagues included in that. They just don't have any fans. And that's not their fault. That's the owner's fault. That's not their fault.
Well, but it's also a fair weather area, too. I mean, we see this in Florida all the time. But Miami doesn't have fans. They have fans of other teams that come watch their games. The same thing in Tampa. And Jacksonville as well. So.
Miami has Miami has like a solid history, and so do the Chargers, but they had that history in San Diego with Air Coryell, all those things, Philip Rivers, true. LT. So they had that. But even the Rams have not a great fan base, but they have a solid, decent fan base. So I don't know. Like I don't think personally, I don't think this moves the needle whatsoever for the Chargers in terms of ticket sales, especially on the field. I don't think this moves at all. Again, Jim Harbaugh I was telling Josh this before we officially went live. Until Ryan Day became the head coach of Ohio State, Jim Harbaugh didn't have a single win against Ohio State, and Ryan Day has been winless against Michigan, whereas since Ryan Day has been the coach of Ohio State, Jim Harbaugh has won every single game. So what does that say more about Harbaugh or Ryan Day? Because Harbaugh was 0-7 prior to that. So I don't think Harbaugh is a good coach. Harbaugh has gotten to choose his entire all of his players. He gets to choose them. You can't do that in the NFL. You have to scout and you have to draft. Josh brings up a good point. He did take Colin Kaepernick to a Super Bowl. Looking back on it, fair. But you could also say, and I'm not comparing them whatsoever, but after Cam Newton's Super Bowl, he kind of fell off the wagon as well. And after the Kaepernick Super Bowl, he also fell off the wagon as well. So, again, no comparison. Cam Newton in his prime would run circles around Colin Kaepernick. But you can say the same thing at that point. I don't like it. I don't like Jim Harbaugh as a coach. I think his brother John is a much better coach. I do think players rally around Jim Harbaugh, but he's not going to have that same youthful energy. He's not going to have a good offensive line. How about that? He's not going to have a good offensive line. He's not going to have a good running back. So he has a good quarterback. He has an aging wide receiver who will be top 5 in the NFL this year. I don't care. And he has no running back. Mike Williams is always injured. Quentin Johnston can't catch. So, and his defense is bad. I know, Josh, you said it, he took a team to the Super Bowl within 3 years or 5 years, whatever that time frame was. But does this do this doesn't do anything to me. This doesn't do anything.
I think the biggest thing with Harbaugh going to the Chargers, I think it's a good move. I don't think he's a terrible coach. All right. I want to put that out there. I don't hate every coach the way that you do, Joe. But
I don't hate every coach. Jim Harbaugh is a fucking moron.
I think he can coach. That's just my personal opinion. But I'm going to be very interested to see what type of offense he runs, because what he did at Michigan, they focused on playing good defense and managing games. Well, when you have
a quarterback, he was a game manager. Yeah.
Well, but there's also a lot of people that say he has a lot of untapped potential because Harbaugh purposely did not ask him to do much. He has fair. Justin Herbert. Herbert has a huge arm. You can ask Herbert to do a lot of things. So I'm curious to see how this offense will be shaped as a result. But the first thing that this team needs to figure out is their salary cap, because they have way too much tied into older players that are consistently injured and not on the field performing. And it's going to take a couple of years for them to truly get out from under these contracts.
Just throwing it out there. G brings up the defense was insane too. Hittner, Bowman, Justin Smith, Patrick Willis. How about Prime?
Well, and that's what he built at Michigan. He built good defenses. Exactly yeah. And there's some okay pieces on defense there in the Chargers.
Name me one.
Look, Khalil Mack did fantastic this year. Okay, I don't know if that's going to continue, but
he's good in his mid-30s. But continue.
Yeah, he has Derwin James.
Okay, I'll give you that. Love Derwin James. Okay. Name me another.
Yeah. Who's that linebacker they have? And I'm not talking about Kenneth Murray. There's another one that
Eric Kendricks, old.
There was somebody else.
There's a rookie they have. Right, he's okay. Joey Bosa, injured. Asante Samuel Jr.
Well, and this is what I'm saying. Asante Samuel, I do like. I think he's a solid number 2.
He plays like his father, though. He plays a little too aggressive sometimes.
Well, That's you got to fill stat sheets to get contracts. That's just how the NFL works, unfortunately.
But you brought up that Michigan played good defense and managed the game. That is the exact opposite of how the Los Angeles Chargers are currently built. They are built to try and shoot you out because they don't have a defense, and their run game it wasn't even just this past year. Their run game has been awful with Austin Eckler healthy the previous 2 seasons. He still couldn't average 4 yards per carry because that offensive line was so bad. So I don't know. Again, obviously it's in a 1-year turnaround. But if you're a Chargers fan, you're assuming that this team should be a playoff contender at least next year. Because if you look at outside of the Chiefs in your division, it's not that good of a division. Just looking at it overall, it's not that good of a division. You should at least be playing for a wild card spot. If the Steelers are a wild card team, you should be a wild card team. The Steelers are built the exact opposite of you. They have a decent defense and no offense, but they need to be doing that. And Gator brings up J.J. McCarthy to L.A. That was in my head. Wherever Harbaugh went, I was like, he's going to fucking draft J.J. McCarthy, isn't he?
Not going to happen. The way they're talking, McCarthy's probably going to be a first-round pick, and they're not going to waste the first-round pick on a quarterback.
If J.J. McCarthy is a first... Well, hold on. My apologies. He is the best Michigan quarterback ever. I don't know if you guys knew this. He's the best Michigan quarterback ever. Not sure if you heard that line come out of Jim Harbaugh's mouth. But going into the Chargers and our first team of the evening, the My Guys that you all had this year, 3 different ones. Kelly was the guest on this show. We have Justin Herbert, quarterback 17. Obviously, injuries.
So mad about that, too.
Obviously, injuries. He was QB 10 in points per game. That was Josh's pick. Ryan, the god himself, Keenan Allen, wide receiver 8, wide receiver 3 in points per game. Jesus himself is there for you in the 4th round, folks. I hope you know that. Jesus himself is there in the 4th round, and he's going to be there again next year, so you should really fucking draft him. Kelly had Austin Eckler. What a bad year. What a bad year. Top 5 draft pick in most drafts, if not top 7. I didn't see him creep outside of like 7 or 8. And he was RB26 on the year, RB21 in points per game. He was barely an RB2 in points per game when he was healthy. My sleeper, I had Josh Palmer. He was wide receiver 91 in July, wide receiver 65 to end the year. He had pop games for you. We told you a couple weeks to play him, and it paid off, counting it as a hit. Eric Kendricks, I had high hopes for him. G brought up Tutu. I don't know how to say his name, but Tuli Tutu. He was the guy. I thought Eric Kendricks was going to be a guy this year.
Tui Pelotu.
Tui Palapalapala. Eric Kendricks, I thought was going to be a guy. I think outside of Tuli and Derwin James, that defense is tough. And Khalil Mack did have a good year, but he also had 6 of his sacks in one game against the Raiders. So that definitely inflated his statistics a bit. What went wrong here? Injuries.
Yeah, big time injuries.
Up, outside of Keenan Allen, every single one of their fantasy football dogs got hurt.
Yeah.
And granted, Allen got hurt at a
Mike Williams only played 3 games.
Yeah, exactly.
And to his point, he did average over 14 fantasy points per game in those 3 games. So, he produced. But again, it's just injuries. But I think the biggest disappointment for me with this team was the expectations that came with bringing Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator. It was, all right, they're going to be high flying. They're going to be productive. Austin Eckler's there. Keenan Allen's there. Mike Williams, Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert, I think in my projections, was the only quarterback that I had that was throwing for over 700 pass attempts, because I fully expected them to control the clock, sling the football. They had every single weapon you could imagine, and they had good weapons, but the offensive line wasn't effective. Obviously, Herbert went down. Mike Williams got hurt. Josh Palmer spent some time on IR. Austin Eckler missed some time, and then they didn't have an effective number 2 back. And like I was going through and I'm looking at my projections and kind of how everything shook up. Like I found there were some people that were talking about how come you didn't see an Austin Eckler, downturn coming because of, low pass attempts or pass volume, blah, 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 this and that. Based on what I projected him at and what he ended up with, I was only off by 0.4 targets per game. So the targets themselves weren't the issue. It was the touchdowns. And I even baked in touchdown regression. Like I think he had 18 rushing touchdowns last year. I had him at 11. So it's not like I was expecting some big boom in rushing touchdowns, but this entire offense just could not run the football. It wasn't just on Austin Eckler. And that really is an indictment of Kellen Moore as a play caller. He had no fucking clue what he was doing with this team. None.
It'd be interesting to see what they do with Harbaugh there if he decides to say, see ya, Kellen Moore, which I would be surprised. But
he will, yeah.
That's what you have to think at this point. And then does Mike the Monkey bring him back to Dallas, which I don't think he does because Dallas's offense looked...
Well, they mutually parted ways, so...
Fired, guys. If anyone ever says they mutually parted ways, they were fired. I guarantee you that for a fact. The only thing that went well was Keenan Allen.
Yeah,
everything else, like you said, Herbert got injured. I know you bring up Mike Williams, 14 points per game in the games he was healthy. I say it every year. Mike Williams will be good in the games he plays, but he's going to play 5 of them. Yeah. That's who he is.
And he's on the hook for $20+ million next year, so we'll see how that shakes out.
The only good year he's ever had
right before the contract.
His contract year. That's it. That's all he had. And let's also not forget, the guy that they brought in as a first-round draft pick to be Mike Williams was the exact opposite.
They're very different players, though. I don't understand why people think Mike Williams is a jump ball, go up and get it kind of guy.
100%.
Quentin Williams is not a jump ball, go up and get it kind of guy. He's get the ball in space and create yards after the catch. That is Quentin Johnston's game.
Which is insane to me because people touted his speed and his size coming out of TCU. Okay, that should translate well to a pretty solid, deep threat with a big body that's more of a possession receiver than a jump ball guy, which, yes, jump ball, possession receiver, one and the same. But Mike Williams is a straight-up jump ball guy. Quentin Johnston's a big body where you're looking at possession.
Quentin Johnston's only 6'2" and change. Mike Williams 6'5". Like, that's still very different games.
Doesn't have hands. So that didn't help his case. 1. 2, I didn't get the speed thing that people were talking about. Because, like, on game tape, he was outrunning college players, but he looks very slow with the ball in his hands at an NFL speed level. Those guys are catching up to him instantly if you looked at it in comparison with speed, especially with now cornerbacks just casually running 4.3s in the combine like it's nothing. So the speed at the cornerback position has been something that's crazy. They messed up their draft pick. Very clearly they messed up their draft pick. Injuries.
Jordan Addison was and should have been the guy for them. Just throwing that out there.
Who said that in the moment? Who said that in the moment that the Vikings just pulled what they pulled with the Eagles again? For those that didn't watch the live draft show, the Chargers, I believe, were the pick just before the Vikings. Mm-hmm. The Chargers drafted Quentin Johnston. The Vikings then drafted Jordan Addison, and immediately I said, the Vikings just did to the Chargers what they did to Philadelphia 3 or 4 years ago. And It's looking real good in year 1, folks. Let me tell you. It's looking real good in year 1. It was a tough year for the Chargers. Now, for the 7 fans that showed up to the game, I'm sorry. For the 17 that will show up next season, because Jimmy will be there.
I'm sorry.
7-9. 7-10, whatever the record has to be now. It's not going to be good. From 1 shit-ass team to a shit-ass history of a franchise that's in the NFC Championship game on the road in San Francisco, the Detroit Lions. Hard to say what went wrong here, but let's go into it. Josh, you had Amon-Ra St. Brown, ARSB, the Sun God, wide receiver 3 on the season. You had him as your guy. David Montgomery, RB17, points per game, RB15. That was Ryan's guy, so 2 big hits there. No guest on this show. My sleeper, David Montgomery. Felt good on that one, RB27. He was being drafted as an RB3. He played well for you. And then I also threw in Josh Reynolds for a few games. He was a big hit, but he was wide receiver 105. He was basically free. He ended up wide receiver 55. So guy that was free, did some good stuff for you if you ever needed him in the lineup. And Kirby Joseph, despite being a dirty-ass player, set career highs and everything in his second year. So he's a good player for fantasy. Again, really hard to say what went wrong here, but you could argue what went wrong is not using Jahmyr Gibbs soon enough. Outside of that,
he was non-existent for the first 4 weeks of the season.
Yes. Outside of that, though, the guys that were supposed to play well, nobody mentioned Sam Laporta in this fucking show.
Well, in fairness, I don't think any of us expected a rookie tight end to do what a rookie tight end did. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, to be the tight end 1 on the season.
Yeah.
It was really hard to say what went wrong. I mean,
I do have one gripe.
Okay, go for it.
You gave up an additional first-round pick to trade up and get Jameson Williams. What has he done for you in 2 years? He had 9 targets and 1 catch his rookie year. Because, again, he was coming off the ACL that he tore in college. Suspended the first 6 games of this year. So I understand, fully expecting a slow start, but there's no usage. They're basically just saying our entire offense is Amon-Ra St. Brown, it's Sam Laporta, and it's Jahmyr Gibbs. Everybody else is merely an ancillary piece. So you gave away a first-round pick to trade up to get Jameson Williams for nothing.
Well, I think they realize that Amon-Ra St. Brown is open on every single play.
Yeah.
Which is weird because there's another team in that division that I believe we talk about next week because we saved them for way last. We tried to get Adam Rank on the show. That has a wide receiver by the name of DJ Moore. And funny, he's also open on every single play. So if teams would just throw to their receiver that's open on every single play, it might go well. It's almost like CeeDee Lamb set records this year for himself because, lo and behold, wouldn't you know, he's open on every single play. Keenan Allen, open on every single play. Tyreek Hill, open on every single timing route. I don't know, guys. Maybe just use your number 1 guys that are always open. But you're suspended. I think that's another reason I put Josh Reynolds in there.
He had a free 6 weeks.
Yes, he had free 6 weeks. I was also not a big Jameson Williams fan. He was another just straight speedster. What else can he do? He was just a straight speedster. We saw the same thing. Granted, the man is in jail. Henry Ruggs.
They were 2 completely different players at Alabama.
They ran straight.
No, completely different players.
Yeah, they ran
Jameson Williams was like a number 1 guy for Alabama. Henry Ruggs was never that.
They run straight.
And they're both fast. That's the only comparison.
In the NFL, what are their careers going to be remembered as? Not Henry Ruggs. Their career for Jameson Williams is going to be remembered as
it's 100%. I agree.
Straight. Yeah.
He's going to be the guy that takes the top off a defense that, will get maybe 5 targets a game if he's lucky. But again, I don't see the value in giving up an additional first-round pick to move up to get that guy.
I don't either. I'm telling you, I didn't like Jameson Williams. It's at the college level, burning people as a number 1 receiver against the University of Missouri is a completely different thing than trying to torch Jair Alexander any given Sunday. So it doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense to me. I agree. I think giving that up was bad. Overall, Detroit, I think people did have high hopes for you. I think they expect you to be a playoff team this year.
And they've exceeded expectations.
They've exceeded expectations.
They really have.
So it's very hard to say what went wrong with this team. They had a very good
I will say I was only 3 projected targets off of Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I was pretty happy about that.
That's pretty good.
I was within 18 fantasy points of that. So
yeah. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, another team that probably many people did not have at least advancing to the divisional round. of the playoffs and giving Detroit, nonetheless, a run for their money. My guys, Josh, you had Chris Godwin, wide receiver 28. Meh.
Disappointing.
Yeah, let's say disappointing. Jake was our Ryan fill-in that week, Jake Trowbridge. He chose Mike Evans.
He's smarter than me.
That was pretty good. Well, you know what? Jake and I are one and the same because my sleeper was Mike Evans. It was insane that this man was going wide receiver 36 in fantasy drafts.
Wild.
That's insane. That is a massive hit. And
yet our guest was smarter than all of us.
Yes. Kendall Valenzuela. The lovely
Rashad
Kendall.
White. Oh,
she
God.
said Rashad White. And I'm pretty sure it was because of volume.
Yep.
And boy, did he get it.
Yep.
RB4 on the season, RB10 in points per game. No matter how you look at it, he was a RB1 on the season.
I still can't get over 272 carries and still didn't crack 1,000 rushing yards. Like, that's
Joe Mixon numbers, baby.
So bad.
Yeah, well, Tampa's run blocking offensive line, not great. Add that into Rashad White not being a great running back. That's a 2-for-1. My IDP was Kalijah Cansey. I wanted to give you somebody other than Antoine Winfield because I've been burning that guy, and also Levante David, Devin White,
Dog.
The guys I've been touting for 3 straight seasons. So I tried to give you Kalijah Cansey. I said it was a long shot on the show. It was. He will be more productive in future.
He's looked good in the playoffs.
He's looked great in the playoffs.
He looked good against Detroit, yeah.
He'll be more productive in future seasons, but as you all know, Antoine Winfield, dog. Levante David, dog. Devin White,
benched.
Dog. Well, benched, but still a dog. Still a dog. Come on now.
He won't be a Buccaneer next year, so it's not going to matter.
Jamel Dean dropping picks in the divisional game. It's almost like someone's been telling you he's bad. This guy. Again, another team where the question is what went wrong. I feel like they could have used Chris Godwin more if we're getting nitpicky here. There was a stretch where they just did nothing overall as a team. But again, they very much outdid expectations. Baker Mayfield
100%.
was much better than people expected. From a fantasy standpoint, Baker was a guy for multiple weeks if you needed to stream a quarterback. I know I put him in my lineup.
He had over 4,000 yards this year.
I know I put him in my lineup a couple of weeks. It's no surprise that gunslinger Baker Mayfield was looking at Mike Evans. Absolutely no surprise. Trey Tucker seems to be, or Trey, okay. Is it Trey Tucker or Trey Palmer? Palmer.
Trey Palmer. Trey Tucker is in
the
Vegas
rookie
with the
on
Raiders.
the Raiders. I always get them mixed up because I know they're both rookies this year. Both Trey. They were both roughly drafted around the same spot. I always get them confused. Trey Palmer. Beautiful. Trey Palmer. Palm Tree. Tampa. There we go. That's how I remember it. I always get them mixed up.
I will say with Chris Godwin, I'm very surprised that he even crossed 1,000 yards because I feel like every single time we're looking at Chris Godwin, it's like, where's the production? And then you look at the end of the season, it's like, wait, he crossed 1,000 yards, really? And then you remember, well, there's 17 games. It's only like 50 something yards per game. That's not the end of it's not the most difficult thing in the world to cross anymore. So, but I'm a little disappointed in my Sean Tucker take that he never really materialized. So.
Yeah, I was hoping for something there too. Maybe they get him involved in year 2. But Chris Godwin, the 2 touchdowns, well, 3 touchdowns if you're counting the rushing touchdown, that kind of hurts his fantasy value there as a slot guy. Mm-hmm. But we can't say enough about Mike Evans. What is this? How many
10 years in a row.
10 years in a row.
10 years in a row.
This man has crossed 1,000 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Now, yeah, like Josh said, 1,000 yards nowadays is like meh. At this point, I think the threshold for like top tier should be talking about like 1,200 for running backs and receivers. The man hit 1,200. Don't worry, guys. Mike Evans is ridiculous. In the 13 touchdowns was definitely helping him as well. I really can't think of much bad to say outside of this team needs to address the secondary that they've been neglecting the last 4 seasons in the NFL. So I don't know what you have, Josh. I mean, yes, Godwin was a little bit.
Those were my points. It was Godwin, Obviously, Sean Tucker. I would have liked to have seen K. Otten get a little bit more involved. I thought he showed some flashes last year. Definitely showed a few this year. But I think it was overall just Canales' scheme doesn't really lend itself to a heavy tight end involvement. But I do like the fact that K. Otten, when they did use the tight end, it wasn't like it was in Seattle where it was 3 different guys they were working in. It was K. Otten. That was it. And with all of the head coach interviews that Canales is going on, there's a chance that maybe they end up with a new offensive coordinator in 2024, which then could potentially lend itself to a K. Otten breakout in his 3rd year.
Yeah. Speaking of the Seattle Seahawks, they are up next. My guys, Joshua DK, wide receiver 21. That's about roughly where he was being drafted, maybe a little lower, but either way, wide receiver 2. Again, Jake and Kendall were on this show. Jake went Zach Charbonnet, RB 45. Obviously wasn't crazy, but there were times where Kenneth Walker wasn't in the lineup and you could play Zach Charbonnet. And Kendall went with Geno Smith. Our Seahawks fan went Homer, and she missed. Very, very much missed. Geno did not have a good season. QB 18. It felt a little better in real life. It still wasn't great, but Geno did not have a good fantasy football season. My sleeper, Tyler Lockett, he finished right where he was drafted. Wide receiver 33 was his ADP. Wide receiver 32 is where he finished.
That's really not a sleeper, though, Joe.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Well, the sleeper at wide receiver 33. I said he was sleeper.
No. I'm saying, like, based on his finish, that's not really a hit. Like, he finished exactly where he was being drafted.
No, I put in the show sheet, it's a miss. I said miss because he hit his ADP.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And my sleeper pick there was, I thought he was going to finish top 20, which is I thought he was just being underrated there. But Jackson Smith and Jigba started to come on later in the year, and he looks very good.
And he brought a spark to that offense, too.
Yeah, and he looks very good. My IDP, you know who doesn't miss? You know who doesn't miss? Bobby fucking Wagner.
I made it a point to, like, copy and paste exactly what you wrote in that show sheet.
I'm going to read it all. And let me tell you, I said he will have 225 tackles, 15 sacks, 2 defensive touchdowns, and go out as one of the best linebackers of all time. I then followed it up with, no fucking shot he actually has that stat line. That is very wishful thinking. But I did say, put money on him being the LB1 with him and Foy finishing at 1 and 2. Wagner was the 3 and Foy was the 1. Come on now, guys.
Pretty damn spot on.
Come on, that's pretty damn spot on. I said hit, dog, the man is ageless. Bobby Wagner is an absolute freak of nature. If he is in the NFL next year, he will once again be listed as my linebacker 1. Actually, probably linebacker 2, because Foy Aluakon's finished as a linebacker 1 the last 3 seasons. He's absolutely insane. He beat out, I think it was Quincy Williams. He had a fucking fantastic year. He beat out the next
finished as an All-Pro.
He finished as the next closest linebacker, 30 points ahead. Yeah, Foy is insane. That man is absolutely insane. But going to the offensive side, which I'm sure most of you is why you're here and what you care about. You could say the faith in Geno Smith might have been a little too much. That might have been the downside of this team. Tyler Lockett being a complete non-factor was a big, big hit. Kenneth Walker, on and off injuries, definitely hurt them. Did you have any big points and hits on what was the big miss here? To me, it's a lot on Geno Smith not repeating what he did in 2022.
Yeah, that's essentially what they went into this season with, right? It was, all right, Geno flashed last year. We gave him the contract. We're going to spend our draft picks on trying to surround him with more talent to make life more easy for him. And, I mean, there were some flashes. You know, he wasn't perfect by any means. He did miss a couple of games. Obviously, the Philly game, which still bites me. But no, I mean, and JSN looked great towards the end of the year, which typically is kind of when you see rookie wide receivers start to take off. It's towards the end of the season when they start feeling more comfortable in the offense, learning the playbook, etc. And we all said that with JSN, it was going to be, when does Tyler Lockett start to fall off? Well, yeah. Tyler Lockett still had 122 targets in this offense. So it's not like he fell off. He was a lot less productive, sure. But I don't know how much of that is truly on Lockett and more on Geno. Now, the offensive line it took a step back from the previous year as well. And they're still working in some young pieces there. But I mean, DK did everything that DK does, caught his touchdowns, got his deep balls. He was second on the team in targets behind Lockett, but about 3 behind. That's kind of how these two operate, right? They're kind of within 5 to 7 targets of each other. Kenneth Walker, when he played, fantastic. Zach Charbonnet, when he was the lead back in this offense, fantastic. The issue is that both of these guys are kind of built for heavy workloads and not your 12 to 15 touches. So they need to figure out what to do with this tandem and how to make it work within this offense. And they're going to get a new offensive coordinator. Remember, Shane Waldron, who was their coordinator, just took on the OC job in Chicago, which I think I may have forgot to put in the notes. But so they're going to be looking for a new offensive coordinator in Seattle. So maybe one that comes in has a better idea of how they can work Walker and Charbonnet together and still make the offense hum the way that it did in 2022.
Of the two, I think Walker could be okay with less volume.
I agree. He's more of a big play threat. Yeah, he's good.
I don't know where to put him, but in open space, top 3. You could, if you told me Kenneth Walker was the best open space runner in the NFL, sure, I wouldn't argue with you. In all honesty, I would not argue with you. He's ridiculous with the ball in his hands. I think he could, if he took maybe a little bit of step back and Zach Charbonnet took more of the bruising runs, and Walker took more of the passes and still was able to get some like scat back work, but just a little bit more. I think that's the tandem.
Well, and this is what makes Kenneth Walker so good, because he's built like a big bruising back. So he himself can wear down defenses. But and the moment they're worn down, like he's gone. If you're putting Charbonnet in that role to wear down defenses, I feel like that's only going to make Kenneth Walker better.
Exactly.
In that wear down role.
I think, and again, this do not take this like word for word, like put him in this offense. It's the same thing. If Kenneth Walker plays more of a James White role that year, where James White was RB8, whereas James White did run the football, and Kenneth Walker would run more than James White. But if he relies more on the passing game like James White did, and then does a little less in the run game, but still has enough to be productive, that's Kenneth Walker. That has top 5 written all over it, no doubt in my mind. That's 100%. So I think that's what they should do. There's not a single smart coach in the NFL, so obviously that's not going to happen. But that's what they should do. I think Seattle, their issue is Geno. And you were holding on to 2022 Geno. Fair. He earned it. Like he definitely earned it, right? He definitely.
Well, and this is going to be the situation the Bucs find themselves in. Like Baker outperformed. He's in a contract year. He proved it, right? So the Bucs are stuck if they don't pay him. Well, what happens when we get the Baker that we've already seen that we don't like? Now the Bucs find themselves stuck, right? That's just what happens, because there's so few great quarterbacks that when teams find a good one, they have to latch themselves onto them.
So in a way early scenario, you're looking at the Buccaneers and the Seahawks. If they want to move on, the Seahawks are in a better position than the Buccaneers, but they are still in, I believe, that puts them in the high teens, I believe, 18, 19, somewhere around there. And the Bucs are going to be sitting at 24, 25. So the Bucs are in an even worse position. I'm just doing quick things off the top of my head. They might be 26.
I can tell you exactly where they are. Give me 2 seconds.
Thank you. Yeah, if you can tell me that. You're looking at quarterbacks that are going to be in that area. Michael Penix, maybe, depending on how he looks in the Combine and Pro Day, that might shoot up.
So Seattle is 17.
Yep.
No, 16, excuse me.
Okay.
And
Tampa's probably 25, 24, somewhere around there. Because they had the worst record of any divisional team, so they'd be the lowest.
26.
Okay, 26. Thank you. So you're looking at, you want to talk about J.J. McCarthy will probably be there. Michael Penix, again, I think he goes higher. But I think maybe Michael Penix might be there. I have no fucking clue where Jaden Daniels is going. I've seen him as early as 3 to the Patriots. I've seen him as late as pick 32. Some team trades up for him to get a fifth-year option. Yet I've seen him all over the place in drafts, so I don't know.
Most places I've seen Daniel is either 2 or 3.
I've seen him mostly at 3. I've seen maybe they're just one.
I think I've seen him at like 8 to the Falcons. That's probably the lowest I've seen.
Maybe they're clickbaity and we're just like, ooh, we're gonna put Jaden Daniels low.
And you're talking about him, so you're you're doing exactly what they want you to do.
Yeah, and I'm just throwing it. I don't think he goes that low. I think he's probably gonna be top 10, especially if he throws at the combine. Which, if he doesn't throw at the combine, he'll throw at his pro day. He's probably gonna look.
I think the top 3 quarterbacks in this draft are pretty safe. It's 4, 5, and 6 when you start talking about Penix, Bo Nix, and McCarthy. Those are the 3 that, to me, could really go anywhere. And medicals are going to be a huge thing for Penix. I've seen him go top 10. I've seen some mocks where people are completely fading him all the way into the 4th round. Bo Nix, I've seen a lot of people peg him to Denver, that he has some of those traits that that kind of remind Peyton of Drew Brees. And with McCarthy, I hear a lot of people talk about just untapped potential. And I think that's the big thing with what they like about McCarthy versus what they don't like about Penix, because Penix is an older college player, right? And he still has holes in his game. Well, if he's an older player and still has holes in his game, how long until a team can work those kinks out, right? With a younger player like McCarthy, who I believe is only 21, he's on the younger side.
He looks like he's 12, so yeah.
Yeah, right. So there's a lot more time to kind of work and mold him and, further develop those traits that he does have, because his college coach, Jim Harbaugh, didn't develop them because he didn't ask him to do any of those things.
Because Jim Harbaugh's a bad coach. But that's neither here nor there. Why are we even talking about Jim Harbaugh? We already talked about the Chargers. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if Seattle and or Tampa, the 2 teams we've talked about, decide to do just that. Or is Seattle going to wait because Geno still has 2 years left on his contract and maybe use Geno as that veteran transition to maybe take a flyer on a guy in the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th round and maybe see what he can do. Next team, Miami Dolphins. Oh, baby. Was I fucking spot on with this team. The Dolphins. Jalen Waddle. Yikes. Talk about it.
I mean, he was a wide receiver too. Definitely didn't play up to in points per game. In points per game, I'm getting.
Yes, in points per game. Wide receiver, 34.
Yeah, not
tough
good.
Looks, Jalen Waddle.
I still can't believe he finished over 1,000 yards, though.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Jake and Kendall were still the guests. Jake had Tyreek Hill, terrible season. And Kendall had Devon Achane, which in 3 games, he was a top 24 running back.
Yep.
Pretty much. I mean, he what did he miss? He missed the first 3-4 games, something like that, and then they play Denver, and he immediately jolts to the number 1 running back on the season.
Yeah, it was wild.
So
it's crazy though that he had 800 rushing yards in 11 games.
Yeah, he's a big play.
That is just.
He averaged 8 yards a carry.
7.8 yards per carry. Yeah, that's wild.
That helps. That helps when you can't, when you need an extra player in the secondary to cover Tyreek Hill. So yes, I mean Devon Achane, great season. My sleeper, I said required by family law, Jeff Wilson Jr.
It was not Jeff Wilson.
It was not Jeff Wilson season. It was not, despite what Gianni will comment, it was not Jeff Wilson season. R.I.P. So. Again, required by law. I didn't really dive into the Dolphins. If I did, I honestly probably would have said Mostert just because his ADP, but I wouldn't have actually liked it because I would have said he'll be good for the first game and then he'll get hurt. So
yeah, Mostert had a fantastic season too.
Yes. Obviously, in hindsight, that pick makes me look fucking like a genius, but I would have picked Mostert simply based off his ADP was like RB 55, and he was a starting running back. That was half of my argument with Jeff Wilson. He was RB58, and when he comes back, he could very well just start. So, and my IDP was Jalen Phillips. Good for football, not good for fantasy. That defense got injured, and that's one of the major things that went wrong with Miami was the injuries. But we got asked a very good question last week by Cap for Life, who is a Miami Dolphins fan. And he basically asked us, what is wrong with my Miami Dolphins? From a fantasy standpoint, you can't find anything. For the most part, you really can't find anything that's wrong with them. They have 2 top 24 running backs, a true wide receiver 1. When Jalen Waddle's healthy, like Josh said, he's a top 24 wide receiver in fantasy football. You can't find much wrong from a fantasy football perspective with this team. Hell, their defense.
I found some.
Of course you did. Their defense had top 5 weeks throughout the season as well because of turnovers and return touchdowns.
Yep.
From a real-life standpoint, we talked about it. Their defense got killed with injuries. But don't even look at the defensive side of the football. They couldn't beat up on playoff teams. All of their wins came against bad teams. They beat up on bad teams. The other thing we talked about was Tua in that offense could very well be in trouble if they just continually rely on timing routes, because we saw in the game against the Chiefs and in multiple games this year, when the receivers are thrown off of their rhythm and when Tua is thrown off of his step, nothing happens with that offense. And if they shut Tyreek down, there's not much else that anybody is going to. And Josh brought up on Hard Knocks, it could be a thing with Mike McDaniels as well. Tua throws interceptions. Mike McDaniels say, it's all right, trust the system, you're doing the system. That could be a very big detriment, trusting the system too much. But Josh, talk about the fantasy side of things. What did you find?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is that this offense is too reliant on Tyreek Hill. You mentioned the timing routes with Tua. That this is a product of this Kyle Shanahan version of the offense, right? The same exact thing happens in San Francisco, and I talked about it last week. San Francisco just has bigger wide receivers. So when you're up and you're pressing guys like Tyreek and Jalen Waddle, who are smaller, they're a lot easier to throw off of those routes, which then creates those turnovers.
Yeah.
This offense needs size, plain and simple. They have a ton of speed, and that has been on display from Mostert to Hill to Achane, Waddle, you name it, they all got it. But if they don't have size, they're going to get bullied, plain and simple. And as much as I love Devon Achane, and this guy needs more touches, you still need a bigger back that can help create more space and wear down these defenses. Like you said, having that extra defensive back to double up over the top Tyreek Hill, that's one less bigger guy that's on the defense to tackle Devon Achane, which helps him 100%. I agree. But for an offense that has 2 really, really good wide receivers in Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, they don't use Waddle enough. And that feels weird to say, considering he topped 1,000 yards. But he can do damn near everything that Tyreek Hill can do.
Except
and instead of trying,
that's literally it.
Okay, so he's a 4-3-2. Like it's
exactly.
not.
well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. He does the exact same thing except run a 4-2. That's they do everything the same. And I would argue Jalen Waddle's quicker and shiftier than Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, I think that this offense could work a little bit better if they treated them more interchangeably. That maybe one play or one series, Waddle is the first read, right? Because teams are still going to focus on Tyreek Hill. And the moment that they're like, oh shit, Jalen Waddle's the number one, wait, now we got to shift coverage. And then boom, now you get killed with Tyreek. This is where I don't think that this offensive system is utilizing multiple reads as much as they should be.
Yes.
It's that first read and go. And I don't know if that's an indictment on Tua and not being able to read defenses properly. I know, Joe, you'll probably argue that point, but I feel like he got through his progressions a lot better at Alabama. So I don't think that that's on Tua. I think it's just the system.
Well, I too would get through my progressions better at Alabama if I had 17 seconds to throw the football.
Well, and that's the other thing too. This offensive line has been continually beat up.
Yes, the
So
offensive line been continually beat up, but also I was playing against Vanderbilt, not Ahmad Sauce Gardner. So again, that's
I do think this offense needs to find a more reliable tight end, and more importantly, one that they actually want to utilize in the passing game.
Brock Bowers.
You saw towards the end of the year they started to kind of do some more dump offs to Durham Smythe, but like that's what makes San Francisco so dynamic. Because while they have no problem keeping George Kittle in line to block, when you let George Kittle loose, it changes the entire look of this offense. Miami hasn't found that yet. And I don't know that they've truly looked for it.
So here's some of your free agent tight ends. This is based on average annual value. Hunter Henry is a solid big body tight end who is very good at catching the football. Mike Gesicki. Might remember him in Miami, Mike Gesicki. Outside of that, for big bodies, do we consider Dalton Schultz a big body?
I think Dalton Schultz would fit fantastically in this offense.
I think he would fit
I mean, it's literally a variation of what the Texans are currently running.
But here's the thing. I don't think the Texans let Schultz go because Stroud, I'm sure, likes him a lot.
Yeah,
and,
I agree.
I mean, Dalton Schultz, 3 years, $21 million. Yeah, take that at the tight end position. But then you're looking at Gerald Everett. He's athletic. Noah Fant, yes, big body, but he's more athletic than anything. Then you're getting into the weeds.
You know what, though? I made a point about this in the Patriots article that I just wrote. Hopefully it's coming out in the next couple of days. Noah Fant, his blocking has astronomically improved over the last 2 years.
I mean, he's been in Seattle. It's had to have.
Well, that's the point I'm getting at. So, I mean, and we know how good he is as a pass catcher. Like, utilizing him in a system like this, I think could be huge for this offense.
After that, it really drops off to Austin Hooper, Robert Tonyan, Mercedes Lewis, who is going to be
That's a bunch
40.
of retreads.
Yeah. Jeff Swaim. I mean, you're looking at maybe if you wanted to like take deep shots, Drew Sample has shown something in Cincinnati. It's nothing crazy, but if you
he's
just
a
need an
tight end, he's nothing.
He is, but if you just need an outlet guy, he's been a guy that's been an outlet guy in Cincinnati.
You already have that in Durham Smythe.
Do we though? Do we?
That's how they've used them, and he's been just fine.
Listen, chat's on fire. Gator, I love it. I love the tape. I absolutely love it. Sucks as a head coach. Yes.
Emma's comments have been the most impressive, honestly.
It's not hard to read a defense when that defense is South Alabama. Exactly. You're playing the Perkins School of the Blind half the season when you're the Alabama Crimson Tide. And Georgia fans just draft Brock Bowers. I don't know if he'll make it that far.
I don't know they're going to be in a position to do that.
Yeah,
That's
I don't know if they'll be in a position. I saw Bowers, was it 5 to the Giants, I think? Whoever's a pick 5. Chargers. Oh, still bad. I don't want him there. Still bad. Yeah, I mean, that would be insane, a tight end.
I'm very curious to see where Bowers ultimately gets drafted because everybody talks about him as like a top 4, top 5 talent in this draft. But again, it's a tight end, and not every offense utilizes a tight end the way that Bowers' skill set would need to be utilized. And we've seen Pitts go early and the mismanagement with him the last couple of years. And I don't know that teams are going to want to, reach up and draft Bowers that early when potentially another tight end, Sam Laporta win in the second round.
Dog. So let's just play along with me for a second. I don't think this happens because I do think a team will take him top 15. If he goes to Kansas City,
it's a wrap.
I mean, what? What?
It's a wrap.
If he goes to Kansas City, what are we doing? What are we doing, NFL? What are we doing? What are we doing? Because in the back of my head, that's a thing that's going to fucking happen. That's a thing that's going to happen. Oh, we go from Travis Kelce to Brock Bowers.
Right.
Great. Love it.
It's like how the
Awesome.
Packers have gone from good quarterback to good quarterback to
good
oh, wait,
quarterback.
Jordan Love's a good quarterback too.
Hey, Jordan Love can throw too. What the fuck? Meanwhile, the best starting quarterback in Bears history is Rex Grossman. So, yikes. Baltimore Ravens is the next team. Again, hard to say what went wrong here. But Mark Andrews, tight end 14, that was Josh's guy, obviously was injured. He was a top 5 tight end in points per game. Lamar Jackson was Ryan's guy. QB5, not too shabby. And Kelly Singh says, Josh, you can't have Mark Andrews. Fine, she goes JK Dobbins. But really, it was Mark Andrews. Kelly's guy is always Mark Andrews. So
the fun little segment, though, that we did on this show was the DFS darlings, and she did call out Isaiah Likely. So I will give some props on that.
We love Isaiah Likely.
The Likely was a dog.
Big Isaiah Likely guys on this show. My sleeper, I said nobody, but for the purposes of this show, Zay Flowers. So I nailed it.
He definitely outperformed.
I nailed it. So yeah, hit. Zay is a dog. Love it. And my IDP, Marcus Williams. I just wish this man would fucking stay healthy because he's so good. I wish he would stay healthy. The real safety you should have taken was Kyle Hamilton because he stays healthy.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he's good. Kyle Hamilton's kind of good at football, one might say. Who allowed him to be 6'4" at the safety position? Who allowed that?
Unreal.
Who made that happen?
Who let him fall to Baltimore? That's what I want to know.
It happens every fucking year,
Every
Josh.
freaking draft.
Guess who fell to Baltimore? Lamar Jackson. Guess who fell to Baltimore? Patrick Queen. Guess who fell to Baltimore? Kyle Hamilton.
Yep. Unreal.
Happens we say this every single NFL draft. How did that guy make it to Baltimore? Every fucking draft. How did he make it there? How did Zay Flowers make it to the Baltimore Ravens? That's a great question. Why did he make it that far? Kyle Hamilton was supposed to be a top 5 draft pick this past year. He fell to 14.
Yep.
Why? Who let this happen? That's why, Gator, I agree. Fuck me. How dare I say that? But that's exactly what's going to happen, is that these 31 other idiot NFL teams are going to let Brock Bowers fall to the fucking Chiefs. I know it. I know it's going to happen. The Ravens. What went wrong? JK Dobbins got hurt.
Yeah. 8 carries into the season. Like, come on, man.
He got hurt.
And then Andrews missed some time too. Andrews should, in theory, be back for the conference championship game, though. But in all honesty, the way that Isaiah Likely has played, it's not going to fucking matter.
No.
It really is not going to matter.
I hate saying this because I don't think it does. But does it throw the Ravens off their groove a little bit? Because they haven't played with Andrews in so long and he hasn't played in so long and they maybe rely on him too much. I don't think it happens. But rust is a real thing. In not seeing NFL game speed for 8 weeks, I believe,
Yep.
and especially playoff football AFC championship, not just any like game speed NFL. It is legit game speed, like fighting for your life NFL. So we'll see.
I'm just waiting for this team to develop like a true wide receiver one, the way that some of these teams have. Like maybe it's working this year that they're able to kind of spread the ball around. Like OBJ's had, some good plays. He's been reliable. Definitely not worth 15 million, but he's been reliable. Bateman's made a couple big plays here and there, but they're just kind of like, they're just out there, right? They're just doing their thing, just cogs in the offense. And then you have Zay Flowers, who is like a human joystick out there. And I want to see this kid get 130 plus targets in the next couple of years because I really want to see what he can do, because it seems like him and Lamar are really starting to cook a little bit, and he's gotten some trust in him. But I'm more disappointed. Like, why the fuck is Nelson Aguilar still a thing?
What do you mean? You didn't have Nelson Aguilar first touchdown scorer in the AFC divisional game?
Why?
You didn't have that? That wasn't...
because I can't sports bet in Florida.
Well, I had it, obviously. Duh. It'll be interesting to see if they do try and take a receiver. They need help in their secondary. My God, their corners cannot cover at this point.
Marlon Humphrey's been dealing with an injury too. He's getting up there in age.
He's washed. Arthur Mollett is horrific.
He's good on a blitz, though.
Yes.
He's good on a blitz.
Yes.
He does something right.
All he can do is tackle. They need help in their secondary, and I'm looking at Mel Kiper's draft. He has Ennis Rexstraw from Missouri, the cornerback, going to Baltimore. But it'd be interesting to see, like, I don't know, does a guy like Troy Franklin from Oregon fall that far? That
would be kind of redundant putting Franklin with Zay Flowers, in my opinion.
You'd think, but it feels like a Baltimore thing to do. Yeah. So, I mean, does a guy like this no fucking shot? For some reason, Roma Dunze falls that far.
He'll be a top 10 pick.
No, he's ridiculous. But you have some of these guys that maybe they fall far, and it's a bigger body receiver or a burner down the field, and let Zay cook underneath and let this guy, take some coverage away.
I will say this. I was a big Bateman guy when he came out. I'm curious to see, because he's been moderately healthy this year. And I know they haven't really asked him to do a ton.
Yeah, but he sucks.
See, I don't think he sucks. I just think that the injuries have really kind of started to take a toll on him. And this year has kind of been like getting back into the groove of things. So now that he's got a healthy year under his belt, if he could develop into a strong number 2, or even really number 3, I guess, if you factor in Andrews and Zay being kind of like the 1A, 1B, and then Bateman being like the 2A, 2B, whatever, I think that could realistically work. It's just, I feel like the way that Todd Monken is designing this offense, it's designed more to just spread the ball around and give Lamar more options versus, the first option is not there. All right, I'll just take off and run with it.
G brings up Hakeem Butler. Remember that name? He said Bateman's long-lost brother.
Oh, R.I.P. Stop.
Ravens are set up pretty well. I think everybody and their mother is a Ravens fan this week. That is not a Chiefs fan. So
hell yeah. Honestly, I just want to see Lamar win a championship because I'm so tired of all the shit that he takes in the media.
I need Lamar to not win a championship to have my no running quarterback will win a Super Bowl take. But at this point, every quarterback's about to become a running quarterback. So
you need that mobility.
Yeah, the take isn't going to last long, folks. But I would like it to last. I'd like it to last one more year. I'd like it to last another year. But because if it's first off, I don't want anybody from the NFC to win. Because if Jared Goff wins a fucking Super Bowl, now we're talking about him being like, have you seen him? He has records with Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, and now he has a Super Bowl. Shut the fuck up. It's Jared Goff. Shut up. And then Kyle Shanahan just can't for religious reasons he can't win a Super Bowl. I don't know what the religious reasons are, but he can't win a Super Bowl. So it's Baltimore or bust for me, and that hurts. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's Baltimore or bust for me. Not even because obviously my take, but my buddy's a Ravens fan, and it's way funnier to see him in misery than it is to watch him win. So, but here we are. Rooting for the fucking Baltimore Ravens. Goddamn. Moving on. Minnesota Vikings. My guys, Josh Jordan Addison. Yup. He's pretty good. Ryan, Justin Jefferson. He's pretty good.
I was going to say, I mean, he may have, missed 7 games. He's still top 1,000 yards in 10 games. And in points per game was wide receiver 5. So, I mean, yeah, sure. Was he a bust at the position you drafted him in? Sure. But, I mean, I still think that's pretty fucking impressive what he did this year.
Guest, Kelly, she had TJ Hawkinson, tight end 4. Tight end 1
tight end 1 points per game.
Yeah. My sleeper was KJ Osborne. He finished 2 spots ahead of his ADP. Psych. Jordan Addison really dug into KJ Osborne, let me tell you. That man really dug into KJ Osborne. And then I said this defense is a joke. I was correct. The only guy I said was outside of Harrison Smith. Harrison Smith has finally fallen off the fantasy wagon. He's still a very good safety in real life, but I don't know how much longer this man can hold on to his playing career. He's getting up there in age. And my wild card pick that I said, and I remember exactly why I said it, Marcus Davenport. I was like, well, there had to be a reason the Saints traded up in the first round to get Marcus Davenport at pick 14 in that draft. No. What I forgot to mention was that Sean Payton was the guy that traded up for him. Marcus Davenport played 4 games.
Ouch.
He had 7 tackles.
Good. So let's stop talking about him.
That's how bad he is. Oh, but it's so much fun. It's shitting on Sean Payton. It all comes back to the people we hate, Josh. It all comes back to the people we hate. What went wrong? Kirk Cousins got hurt.
Yeah, that was a big one.
That didn't help.
Definitely
the non-existent run game. That didn't help.
Ooh, yeah. Well, and I think what was more surprising, Alexander Mattison still had 180 carries and had
Did he?
0 rushing touchdowns. 0.
You could have told me he
had 3 receiving touchdowns, but 0 rushing touchdowns on 180 carries.
You could have told me he had 10 carries on the season. I would have believed you. I would have believed you. I would.
He wasn't very efficient with any of those carries. I think he had just
No.
over 700 yards.
Ty Chandler was more efficient with his carries.
Yeah, he was.
I
I will say, with the injury to Kirk Cousins, I was only off on my Minnesota Vikings passing yard statistic projection by 88 yards.
I think the Kirk injury.
I think that's pretty damn impressive.
I think the Kirk injury really helped you there.
Yeah, probably.
They had Jaron Hall at quarterback. What do you mean, meh?
But I'm just saying, like, even if he stays healthy, maybe he blows by that projection. But I mean, they were still slinging it with Josh Dobbs, and Nick Mullins was slinging it too. So,
it's Nicky Dimes, I think you mean. All right, Nicky Dimes, right? Josh Dobbs was not slinging it. Josh Dobbs is a pipe dream. Honestly, that's what Josh Dobbs is. It's a pipe dream. But no run game. They need to get any resemblance of a run game for them to have their passing game respected. Kirk Cousins is a free agent. We assume Minnesota brings him back, right?
I don't know. They seem pretty quick to want to play Jaron Hall. So,
like, you assume Kirk Cousins will be back. Now, granted, you want to talk about a team that could be a wild card for a quarterback here. Bo Nix has been floated in those teens. Could that be a guy? You want to talk about, game end, J.J. McCarthy? Again, the guys that could be floated in this area, sign Kirk to another year, get him one more year, go to the next guy.
Kirk's not gonna sign for just 1 year, even off the injury. I think he's gonna have way too much interest, and I've been seeing a lot kind of linking him to the Falcons, and I think it's mostly just because they have so many weapons already in place. But
if he goes to the Falcons,
I don't know.
Nice.
To me, it really depends on who the offensive coordinator is going to be.
True, very true. And if it's Billy Bills there coaching for the Atlanta Falcons, tell me about a time you overcame adversity, 28-3. If the Vikings let's just play the game. They bring back Kirk. Vikings find a guy who can just get 4.3 yards per carry and just have a defense respect him. How much more does that open up Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson?
Oh my God. Those guys should very easily top 130 targets each. And that's with TJ Hawkinson, who tore his ACL, so I think he's probably going to miss half the season.
You're telling me in a Seattle Seahawks offense that DK can get 119 and Tyler Lockett gets 122. You're telling me these two can't top 130? You're smoking crack. That 100% could happen.
Well, and the only reason I say that it maybe couldn't is simply because we know Jefferson's going to get 180.
Well, Jordan Addison getting 130 still off of his 180 isn't even that out of the question. Minnesota will be good next year, assuming Kirk Cousins comes back. They need to fix their defense, but if for people that are going to also fuck all of you for drafting Justin Jefferson over Christian McCaffrey, you got what you deserved. Not because of the injury, but you got what you deserved. If they bring back Kirk, they find, again, just a decent running back to be back there. Jordan Addison is going to be overdrafted. Justin Jefferson will probably be drafted ahead of Christian McCaffrey again in some leagues, I am sure. But they're gonna have two weapons at the receiver position. And you could argue two of the best, probably the best wide receiver tandem in the NFL in terms of weapons for fantasy football. Like, if you told me you were going to stack Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison on a team, I'd be like, okay. Like, the only
to me, they're right up there with Tyreek and Jalen Waddle and AJ Brown and Devonta. And
but even we always said there were games where Tyreek and Jalen could coexist. There were games where Lockett, and maybe not this past year, but there were games 2 years ago where Lockett and DK coexisted a lot. Mm-hmm. In Philly, it didn't ever feel like there was a lot of games where A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith coexisted this year.
No, they did. It was always either it was A.J. and Smith or it was A.J. and Goddard more often than not. Like, it was one of those two combos. It wasn't like just A.J. Brown or just Devonta Smith. Like, they coexisted just fine.
And to your point on the tight end, you said Hawkinson's going to miss. That gives 8 games for Addison and Jefferson to just
at least, you would think,
coexist the hell out of each other. Yeah. All right. Moving on to maybe one of the bigger disappointments of this season from a fantasy standpoint overall as a team, and then as an NFL team as well. The Jacksonville Jaguars knocked out of the playoffs in the final week by the Tennessee Titans. My guys, Josh, you had Trevor Lawrence.
Awful.
QB 13, QB 20 in points per game.
Awful.
Not good at all. Ryan literally said, literally any and all of them. So wrong.
Whoops.
Whoopsie-daisy. He did go with Christian Kirk, and he did mention one. Kirk got injured, but felt like it didn't feel like he finished wide receiver 33 in points per game.
No, not at all.
I had him on my teams, and I was
he had a couple big games, and that was really about it.
But I was very happy that I had Christian Kirk, though. Like, granted, I do draft my receivers fairly late, so I think, I maybe had Kirk as like my 2 or 3. So I was packing at running back like I normally do, but I was okay with Christian Kirk on my team. So I wouldn't say he was a my guy, die on that hill, but I also wouldn't feel like he had a bad season. It did not feel wide receiver 33 as a guy who had him on a lot of teams, because I thought Kirk over Calvin Ridley, which looks really good in hindsight at this point, because Nikki, our guest, went with Calvin Ridley, which is crazy that man finished wide receiver 18. Because but he was
wide receiver 28 in points per game.
But if I told you, if you had to choose, just looking at the season, Calvin Ridley or Christian Kirk, who would you rather have in your fantasy roster?
Evan Engram.
Well, yes, duh, obviously. He can't play the receiver position.
Sure about that?
He can't. But if I were to ask you that question, I feel like a lot of people would say Christian Kirk. Because, I feel like maybe because Ridley was way more of a disappointment than Christian Kirk.
It seemed like Ridley's games, they were pop games, right? Like, there wasn't a ton of consistency in his season. And then that consistency started to level out a little bit once Christian Kirk got down. But, like, to your point, Joe, I mean, when the 12 games they played together, Ridley was 24, Kirk was 28. And that's really about how I had them projected anyway. They were right there neck and neck. So I don't think that I'm really surprised at how their seasons went. I'm, obviously shocked that Christian Kirk got hurt, and it sucks because, you like the guy and you want to root for him, especially after what he did last year. But I mean, it really was just, it was working in a number one with your number one from last year, kind of taking that step back. But the issues on this team, it all starts with Doug Peterson and his stupidity and loyalty towards Press Taylor. And I don't understand it. Press Taylor is not a good offensive coordinator. I don't even think he's a very good offensive mind. Peterson allowing Taylor to call plays this year was a complete misguided effort, because this offense as a whole took a huge step back.
Who names their kid Press?
I don't know.
Hold on. His name got worse. His name got worse. Press is his middle name. His first name is Sherwood. It got worse. It got worse.
Sherwood Press sounds like one of those
that sounds like a fucking
printing companies in the Midwest.
No, that sounds like a newspaper from Red Dead Redemption 2. That's exactly what that sounds like. Sherwood Press Taylor. No wonder the man goes by his middle name. His parents named him Sherwood. That man calls plays for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Jesus.
Yikes. Sherwood Taylor. That is disgusting. That is awful. My sleeper was Kirk. Again, I said hit on the question mark because I felt happy having him on my roster. But again, I don't expect a lot out of my receivers because I know going into it how my draft strategy is. I draft 3 running backs almost exclusively 1, 2, 3. I will sometimes take a receiver in the 3rd round, but I almost go 1, 2, 3 with them. My ADP, it doesn't matter. I knocked this one out of the fucking park. Foyesade Oluokun kicks every single person in the fucking nuts that he plays. He is insane. Let the man live his life. But as Josh said, you know who we didn't talk about on this show? Was Evan Engram.
And we slept on him. Jesus.
But again,
143 targets.
But didn't it feel like the same thing that happened last year was he didn't start well for the first 8 weeks. He did.
No, he just didn't score touchdowns.
No. But then the second half of the season, he took off like a rocket. And that was the same thing that happened in 2022. So it felt weird. But yeah, when you finish as the tight end too, you really can't argue with that one.
Look, you were perfectly happy with him in PPR leagues. He was steady as it came. But again, it's just he only had 4 touchdowns. And those touchdowns didn't start rolling in until week 13. That was the problem. He didn't have he had what? Let's see. Under 9. So 1, 2, 3. It 3 games before week 15, he had 3 games under 9 fantasy points. You were plenty happy if you started him. You just didn't have the big pop blow up weeks.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't scoring touchdowns. He didn't even get his first touchdown until week 13. But he's consistently seeing targets, consistently getting catches, seeing plenty of receiving yards. He didn't top 100 yards at all during the season. But
would you believe if I told you Evan Engram was going to be 30?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's the same draft class as David Njoku.
I know, but still, that's crazy. 30. But it was the same story in 2022. He had 4 touchdowns all season in 2022. 3 of them came in week 13 and 14.
Yeah.
It was the same story. In those weeks, the for some of you, the championship, but in the semifinals for many of you, 7 for 113 in 2022. The week before, 8 for 62. The week before that, 11 for 162. He starts to come on in the second half of the year. I don't know. I feel like it's going to be the same story next year. There's going to be some people that sleep on him, and is he the mid-round tight end that you bite on? Because he is a mid-round tight end.
Yeah, with Trey McBride, with Sam Laporta, with Dalton Kincaid, the young guy Sam Laporta, with them kind of taking that leap, the veterans are going to start being slept on, right? You're going to see even Travis Kelce take a step back. You're going to see Mark Andrews take a step back. You're going to see Evan Engram take a step back because everybody's going to want the shiny new toy. And go out, keep drafting older. Why do you think Keenan Allen kept falling in drafts? He's the old guy that people are tired of drafting. It happens literally every single year because people start buying into their projections and what they're hopeful for.
It is insane that we always talk about avoid the mid-round tight end, but for the past 2 years, Evan Engram has been that mid-round tight end that has actually paid off for you.
Yep.
So could be that mid-round guy that you maybe break the rule for. But then, of course, the moment you break the rule, he's
going to burn you.
Yeah. That's when he burns you, exactly. Because then I'm sure there's going to be guys like David Njoku that'll be floated out in the middle rounds. Dalton Kincaid will be floated out in the middle rounds. There's going to be a lot of guys that'll cloud that area, and it's just going to be another crapshoot. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens with that tight end position. But if there's one thing that went well for Jacksonville fantasy-wise, it was Evan Engram. I'm not even going to say
Travis Etienne, too, had a pretty solid season.
No, he didn't.
He didn't have a good ending of the season. Basically, his fall started Evan Ingram's rise.
Yes. Trust me, I had Etienne. I can tell you, I was not happy to have Travis Etienne on my team.
Towards the end of the year.
Yes, he had that stretch of 3 games where he had 6 touchdowns. That was a great stretch. You want to know what he didn't do in those games? Run for over 60 yards. He had 3.8 yards per carry. We talk about guys who can't, get over 4 yards per carry. They're bad. He did not have a great season on the ground, in all honesty.
Yeah, he only had 2 100-yard games.
They weren't good. In a couple of those games, they were pop. And then we talked about, like, week 1. We said we came in, like, after week 1, we said Travis Etienne had a good week. No, he fucking didn't. He had one good run. 1 60-yard run for a touchdown, and that made his entire week. He didn't have a good week.
I mean, you liked him because of the PPR upside. I mean, 100%. He had 73 targets on the year, 58 receptions. But, yeah, 3.78 yards per carry. Not great. Look, it's better than Rachaad White, so I'll take it.
Better than Rachaad White. I also don't think a lot of people saw Tank Bigsby and Dearness Johnson getting as involved as they did.
Bigsby didn't do shit, and everybody was talking about how he was going to usurp the job from Travis Etienne. That was laughable.
It's not doing shit. It's taking carries away.
Did he, though?
Dude, early on in the season, he was taking goal line carries from Travis Etienne.
And was doing literally nothing with them.
No, he was doing nothing with them, but you want to know what they kept doing? You want to know what Mr. Sherwood Taylor kept doing? Trotting his ass out there. So
he only had 50 attempts on the year. Outside of week 1, where he had 7 carries, he had 2 other games, where he topped 3 carries.
I'm saying those carries came in crucial situations. And by crucial, I mean crucial for fantasy points, like on the goal line.
Well, when you're averaging 1.86 yards per carry in your first game, you're not going to get very many more after that.
Dog, woof, goes Tank Bigsby. Auburn, woof, War Eagle. Caw-caw. I don't know.
Shut up, Joe.
He has a good
close
name.
This thing up.
That's a great name, Tank Bigsby. Let me live my life, okay? Let me live my life. These shows are going to be long. There's 8 fucking teams we have to talk about.
Yeah, and we could very easily get them done in an hour.
But then the comedy is not there, Josh. We're here to entertain the people. You're moving. Calm down. What do you have to do right now? What do you have to do?
I got to prepare for another series of shows I got to record after this.
Meh. Jeez. Meh. Jeez. All right, folks. We have our final A Look Back show next week. And then following that is our Super Bowl prop bet show, which will be a lot of fun. We have a good time on that one. But last, we finish up with the best of the best from 2022, all playoff teams we talk about next week, and I believe most of them are playoff teams from this year as well, so we'll be able to discuss what went wrong for them, not just preseason, regular season, but postseason as well.
Oh, no, we lead off with the Giants next week. That'll be a fun one.
Oh, that was hilarious. Yes, I looked at the show sheet, and that's why I said most, because I was like, I thought I remember 1 team or 2 teams in there that were bad, and I was like, what a fall from grace the New York Giants had this year. That was awesome. So, yes, we'll kick off with the Giants next week, unless some breaking news happens with one of these playoff teams that jolts the Los Angeles Chargers like they did up to the first spot on today's show. For Josh, myself, the non-existent Ryan Weisse. You can follow Club Fantasy on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Club Fantasy FFL. The URL is clubfantasyffl.com. Always remember, defense wins championships. Offense wins fantasy football. We will see you next week.